So recently I uploaded a video where I ranked some of the provincial flags of Canada. I looked at the flags of Alberta, Nova Scotia, Ontario and Quebec, and I judged them based on aesthetics, whether they're distinct, memorable and visually appealing, as well as other factors such as their historical significance and how well they represent the people of the province. If you haven't seen that video already, I'll put a link to it in the description and there will be a pop-up at the end of this one as well, so check it out. Now, after the video, I got a really interesting comment which I wanted to share as the basis of this video. Here's how it goes. I think you're failing to understand the history behind the flags you're rating. Should a flag represent the history of the province, or should it reflect only the current population, meaning it would need to change every 10 years or so? For example, for many people of African descent, the British people represented freedom from American slavery. While it's important that symbols represent all Canadians, many believe Canada's history, which in many ways shaped the country they immigrated to, should not be disregarded in favor of symbols from the countries they left behind. This comment really stuck with me because it raises an important question. What is the true purpose of flags? Should it honor the history of the land it represents, or should it evolve based on the people who are living in the land today? Take the flag of Quebec, for example. I like this flag because it represents both the province's current population as well as its historical ties to France, and I pointed that out in the video as well. But if you think about it, that's largely due to Quebec's effort to preserve the culture and historical identity. They've got strict language laws in Quebec, which means that any immigrant that has moved to Quebec will have to adapt to their language and to their culture customs, and that ensures that the flag remains relevant over time. Quebec is unique in this way. They resist change. It makes the flag feel timeless compared to other flags. Other flags like the flag of Ontario, which I mentioned as well in the video, I rated Ontario's flag quite low, and that's mainly because of its use of the Union Jack in the top left corner. While the Union Jack is a nod to Canada's colonial past, it has little relevance in modern Ontario as we know today. The province is also one of the most diverse places in Canada. Just look at the GTA region to see the diversity in demographics in display. You'll find significant populations of minority groups in that area that have lived in the area for decades, and they, honestly, if it were up to me, I would say that they deserve representation in the flag as well. And beyond just immigrant communities, the flag also fails to recognize any of the First Nations who've lived in the land for centuries. The Mississaugas of the Credit and other Indigenous groups are pivotal to the historical ties of the land, and any symbolism relating to them is not present in the flag at all. So while the flag is meant to represent history, it usually only tells part of the story. It reflects Ontario's British colonial past while completely overlooking the Indigenous people who shaped the land long before European settlers came. The commentator's argument is that flags should preserve history rather than represent a constantly changing population. While I get the sentiment that they're coming from, and honestly, if you base flags based on population, which keeps changing over time, demographics change, especially in Canada, where immigration is higher than a lot of other countries, the symbols would need to keep changing on a flag, and the flag will not remain as timeless and universal as it can be. But as a counterpoint to that, I would say that if flags have come to a point where they need to be changed every 10 to 20 years and they're not universal and timeless, they're not good flags either. That would be the other end of the spectrum, and that shouldn't be there as well. If the symbols used on the flag need to be swapped out every few decades, then they weren't good symbols to represent the communities in the flag to begin with. Just look at the Canadian national flag. Before the maple leaf flag was adopted in 1965, this was Canada's flag. It had the Union Jack. It had the Union Jack, much like Ontario's current flag. In fact, if you give me one of either Ontario, Manitoba, or Canada's old flag, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But yet, Canada made the decision to swap out this old flag and create something new, something that would represent all Canadians regardless of background, and that's what makes it such a strong flag. It carries historical significance while still being a unifying symbol. In fact, some of the proposed designs for Canada's new flag had the Union Jack and fleur-de-lis, but they ended up not being selected because of Canada's efforts to represent everyone, not just English and French Canadians. This whole discussion got me thinking about some of the other more recognizable flags of the world. Take the flag of the United States and the United Kingdom, for example. On one half, we have the Stars and Stripes flag of the United States, which currently has 50 stars in its flag, representing the 50 states. But if a state is added to the flag, then the flag will be updated to have 51 stars. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have the flag of the United Kingdom, which hasn't been changed since 1801. It represents the union between England, Ireland, and Scotland, even though UK only has control of Northern Ireland still, but they still have representation of Ireland in the UK flag. What's fascinating is, because Ireland is not part of the UK anymore, the Union Jack flag represents a historical reality which is in the past, and it doesn't reflect the reality of the United Kingdom as it is right now. Meanwhile, the US flag continues to grow and adapt based on if the situation requires it or not. So all in all, this brings us back to the original debate. Should a flag be a historical artifact frozen in time like the flag of the United Kingdom and of Ontario, or should it evolve to reflect the present like the flag of the United States? Personally, I think the best flags strike a balance between both. I gave the example of the Canadian flag. I'm sure there's other examples out there. If you can think of other examples, put it in the comments as well. And I leave this question as an open-ended question for you. What do you think? Should flags change as populations shift, or should they be frozen in time to represent history and the historical past of the country and the land it represents? Let me know in the comments.